This is Brian, ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 2020's Tribes of Europa, which is a new series that premiered recently on Netflix. And this seems to be primarily a German production. And you can tell because while it's very similar in the vein of the Hunger Games, and I'll explain what it's about in a moment, it has a certain brutalness, excuse the term, that's more fitting from what I understand of German sensibilities than American ones. The story revolves around a Europe of the future that is fragmented into various tribes. And the story, at least in the first series, does not tell you what caused whatever calamity ripped the continent asunder, though they refer to it as Black December. Though, as I said, you don't quite know what that means. Though what you do know is that Europe has devolved into various factions fighting for hegemony. And this is the story of those factions. Though there's a group called Atlanteans, as in Atlantis, I assume? I don't know. But they have technologies that are beyond those that most of the remaining tribes in Europe had, which is to say they have airships, they have, I assume, laser weapons, and all sorts of abilities that have been lost to the bulk of the continent. And the story revolves around them rediscovering this part of their past and its connection to the event known as Black December. It's a pretty good series, though what's best about it, in my eyes, is that it only lasts 6 episodes. Remember, the problem with the Marvel Netflix shows oftentimes was that they had 13 episodes, but not 13 episodes of story, which is to say there was a lot of filler and too many instances of there would be these really awesome highs, but then you'd have 3 or 4 episodes of mid to lows because they had too much time to tell a story. In the case of Tribes of Europa, they only have 6 episodes in a season. So therefore, it's tight. There's a lot of world building in those 6 episodes and introducing us to the world and people who exist within it. So that's really interesting, and it doesn't give itself time to meander because there isn't any. If you're going to meander with 6 episodes, I don't know what to say to you, frankly, because it's not a lot of time to world build. And this series does a lot of world building. It's very much practical in terms of its special effects, and it looks really good. There are lots of shots outside in abandoned buildings, at the seashore, things like that. Lots of real, actual sets. And this is a hallmark of Netflix series, as far as I can see. Namely, they are expensive. This is an expensive series, no doubt about it. There are only 6 episodes, but those 6 episodes are production designed to death. It's very rich looking. It's an interesting world. It's also a world that you've seen before in lots of movies. There's not a lot unique about Tribes of Europa, at least not at the moment, but that's okay, because not everything has to be unique. The story is interesting, it's well told, it's very well acted, and I mentioned a comparison to the Hunger Games. And while that's there, this is more adult, which is odd. It feels very much like it's based upon a young adult novel, but at the same time, once again, this plays very adult. So it gives it a kind of odd feel to it. Another thing is that I'm wondering if this series is not analogous to Brexit and the leaving of Britain from the EU, because it feels like that. The story feels very much pro-one Europe, as opposed to fragmented, which is what's happening now with Britain and the rest of the EU. So it's an interesting political statement to make, and being that it feels to me an entirely European one, that's interesting, because it's not reflecting the values and the mores of Americans. And in fact, that's one reason why I tend to like a lot of what Netflix does. A lot of its series aren't produced here. They're produced in Europe. They're produced in Africa. So what you get are themes that are oftentimes universal, but their approach to issues changes. And that's interesting. And you don't see that anywhere else, really. And that's, for me, a great reason to watch Netflix, and why I prefer it over most other streaming networks. So, if you have not seen Tribes of Europa, check it out. It's well done, it's got interesting characters, it's fun, it's serious, and it's approaching things from a perspective you probably don't see a lot of. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow. Peace.